keep my face off of this. Yep. So I've got, that's, I don't know, 25 minutes or so. Hopefully we have enough time for that. And what I wanted to do in response to Jacob's request was just walk through how I use, the resources to support my railroading in both space and time. And the space is the space in my basement, and then the space on the map of where the layout actually is. So let's just get going here. If I can advance this there. So give you a bit about where my interest in the Great Northern came from, because I'm from Tennessee originally, as you probably tell by my accent. Give you a just very brief overview of the layout I'm building and its evolution, and how I've used the Society's materials to help me immensely. I couldn't have done this without the GN Railway Historical Society. And then a bit about contributing to the publications, because we all stand on each other's shoulders here, and taking advantage of other things like the store. So when I moved here, my wife and I moved here in '85 to Western Washington, and we would hike and mountain bike like to places like this old Cascade grade. This sort of predated some of the Iron Goat, and found all this infrastructure that was there and got very interested in this. I'm a civil engineer by profession, so this stuff just really fascinates me. We would cross country ski by the Foss River Bridge, wondered about this. We climbed in the area, did various things all up and down the Skykomish River Basin and the Wenatchee River Basin. So the Great Northern was a natural. And I've heard several people tonight talk about this book, Lines West. This is the book, too, that hooked me on the Great Northern Railway. I got back into model railroading after a long hiatus in '91, and bought this Bowser Northern kit and put it together. But it's not really accurate for the GN. So a lot of this is about the journey to getting more and more accurate. And it is a journey. You never quite get there. It's like taking half the distance to the wall. I started building the layout in 1995. I joined the Historical Society in, I think it was '94. So this conventional construction here. And it progressed, and I used photos taken from some of our sojourns in the Cascades. So the photo in the upper left is from June in the Cascades north of Index, Washington, near Galena. And I decided, well, I'll try to paint this as a backdrop. First time I ever tried painting anything, sort of paint by numbers if you work from a photo. And it turned out pretty well, I think. And that sets a lot of the time. Well, it does set the time of year, early summer, so June. Through Lines West, one of the things that drew me to the GM was just the eclectic power, the home built steam locomotives, the mountain setting, the electrics, and the ability to do some mainline operations, which I was just getting into. I really liked Hill's philosophy and the way he ran his business. It was a really interesting operation, first class. His idea of building traffic and this notion of a rake, where the line from BC down to, say, Portland was the head of the rake and the transcontinental line was the handle. So it was the only transcontinental that never went into receivership, in fact. So I'm modeling Everett, which was a nice junction here from the transcontinental line to then, operate with trains running up to BC, down to Seattle, and so forth. The track plan looks like this. It's an L-shaped. It's about 30 feet long by 12 feet wide. Got Everett in the sort of the center of the main element. There's trestle over in this area. And then the upper level is the Cascade crossing. Helixes on both ends to get up to that level, and then staging underneath. Someone mentioned the fast mail. This is a photo down below of the fast mail strung out around this curve in the knee of the L. One of my favorite trains. And I have to be open here. I just unabashedly stole this, basically the track plan from Jack Parker's Northern Pacific that was featured in the 1995 Great Model Railroads. this progressed just through a few photos of the layout. This is looking at the helix on what was the right-hand side before. The trestle area, this kind of canyon. Then Everett itself, you can see the backdrop, summer in the Cascades here. You can see the upper level and Everett here, both juxtaposition to one another. And then finally, the left-hand side here is the other helix. And then underneath it all is staging, so I can run a whole raft of different trains up across the Cascades and into Everett from Vancouver, for example, Bellingham. One day, maybe I'll hook Jacob's branch, the Anacortes branch in. We'll have to work out how we can do that remotely. And in terms of the activities of what I've been doing, I think I spend about equal time in research. I would love just delving into some of the minutia of the Great Northern, its engineering, its operation. But then I spent about equal time of these four elements: research, layout, construction, equipment acquisition or construction, tweaking, tuning, and operating the layout. And as the arrow shows, just multiple passes around this, homing in on a time, which I have set as early June of 1951 in Everett in the Cascades. And so as I went through, say, for example, the equipment, at first I was just looking for anything GN. Then I started refining things into sometime in the 1950s, and then finally to June of 1951. And you can see a lot of outtakes here on my shelves of the two-tone cars from the 60s, the red boxes from later in the 50s, the white caboose paint from the late 50s, 60s, and so on. And so the trains defined to a certain extent this time. I knew it had to be early summer, but I wanted to run the fast mail. You got to see a bit of that, which is just a great mix of head-end equipment. And I've got these three passenger trains, the Empire Builder, which is the 1940 version, first version, lightweight, and the Oriental Limited. I've loved the heavyweight cars and the pre-war Empire Builder cars that went to the Oriental Limited, and then the International as it started up running in around 1950 into up to Vancouver. Then the Cascadian, some of the transcontinental freights, fruit forwarder, the trains that ran in blocks from Vancouver to California, the GWS and the SWG, the GWIS and the SWIG, and then locals like the Oiler. Learned a lot from Bill Sorensen about the Oiler, great train, a lot of fun to operate, and trains from Bellingham and even up Sky Valley. So it turned out that I ran into this off of the Society's webpage. I found this link on greatnorthernempire.net and was compiled by Jim Betts. And I didn't know him at the time. We're great friends now, but at the time I didn't know who he was, but his timeline was very helpful. So, you know, you see some of these, like International goes into service in June of 1950. For a while, I thought that would be my summer. But then I liked the F units, and F units replaced the E units on the first Empire Builder, first lightweight Empire Builder in 1950. So moved into this just before June 3, which is when the Empire Builder equipment went to the Oriental Limited and became the Western Star. And then I want to compliment the Society on the reference sheet format. To me, it's just genius. These are individual sheets that you can file however you want. You don't have to go look through, for example, the MP, some back issue of the Main Streeter, for example. Here you can find specific topics in these individual reference sheets. So just a really good way to do it, I think. And I've worn these things out. Detail sheets on like the cabooses. So as I acquired cabooses, comparing here, or other freight cars, and Bill Sorensen's called what I do freight car geekery, which is an apt description. But here's a little Accurail freight car that's, you know, you weather it, it turns out to a quite passable model. And then looking at when things ran. This is part of that going around the circle of refining things. So plywood cabooses on the left, yes. There's a really cool, this sloped cupola X310, which is, there's a great model of it out now, but it's a little too late for me. And then certainly the international cabooses that were built during the 60s, they're too late. But without the Historical Society, it's really hard to figure out when these things ran, what they did, what some of the specifics are. So I can spend hours in these reference sheets. Reference sheets also make you aware of unique equipment. So I was aware that some of these 25-foot cabooses in the Cascades had steel underframes, a Lidgerwood underframe for pusher service, and finally discovered that there was one that was imported. So here's a nice shot of one being shoved by one of the R2s. And then information on locomotives, like the FTs, and here's a nice shot of some Stewart super detailed FTs that were done by former GN and BN engineer and Society member Ray Wheeler. Another one of the operators over at Bill's layout too. In the passenger train info, great stuff on the Empire Builders, specifically say this 47 to 51 version that I have. I can find a lot of detailed information in the reference sheets. And you go through the same thing for the internationals, post-war trains just in general, service in Seattle, and then the Cascadian, great train for this layout. You see a little 4-car rendition of it in the lower photo there. And I have this now penchant for trying to replicate photos if I can. So here's one I haven't replicated yet, but I found as such an unusual photo. I found this I was fortunate to get a complete set of some of the old reference sheets from Tom Noe, another modeler here in the Seattle region. And this was included a little folder on the tour of the 47 Empire Builder across the country. And the first thing I noticed is, why is the observation car coupled onto these two E units? And what happened is, apparently, they ran this exhibition across the country, St. Paul, all the way to Portland, so down to Columbia, up to Tacoma, Seattle, and then over to Wenatchee. Then they pulled the train in reverse, back across the Cascades, moved the locos around, and went up to Vancouver. So all this was published in a 1982 document that had these photos of Ron Nixon and the descriptions here of February 17th, this operation. This also shows another interesting historical tidbit. We know about the bridge and a bridge at Rock Island over the Columbia, but this is Foss River, and you can see where it's been strengthened with the center column for the main span, where there's another bridge and a bridge, a single truss girder that was added in the center at some point, probably at the same time, nearly, that the Rock Island Bridge was strengthened. Reference sheets provide great ideas for photos. So here's an H6 pulling a bunch of gonds along Puget Sound. So I can replicate that, not on Puget Sound, but on my layout. I spend a lot of time trying to get the entire consist appropriate for the 1951 era, where all the cars are either 51 or earlier. And so it's taken a while to find these, build them, purchase them, do whatever, and then research things like, yes, they carried a lot of lumber in GS Gonds, so that's fair game here. And then up this Pennsylvania Gone, the rock there, actually I picked up on to Medicine Creek up in Glacier National Park, so that has its own connection to the Great Northern and Glacier. Then puzzles, like when were the Ys painted in Empire Builder colors? And so you can run through a lot of different references trying to figure out when that happened. My era, I think it's reasonable to say there were green and orange and green Y1s running around. So this is a key model, and then this is an older Tenshoto model. And so mix of green and orange had to have occurred. Other things confirming whether you like it or not. I love this Ryder storage mail car with the Ryder compartment on the back and the Empire Builder paint. Bought it from Challenger a number of years ago, but alas, too late for me. This is maybe late 50s paint for this car. I need to repaint it into Pullman green, and it wasn't imported in Pullman green, but it'd be a great car for the fast mail. The Cascadian, we see photos, a lot of H6s pulling the Cascadian, but the reference sheet will show you that there were others as well, including P2s that are pulling the power in across the Cascades. Other things like engine and caboose assignment by division, and some of these go way back, into 1976, and there's still the FOEB. But these sheets give great information of what was running where, when. Then when cabooses have been imported, there were a number of them in the late 90s in the 25-foot series and different types. The reference sheets and modelers pages actually helped list out what cabooses were later, early, that sort of thing. And the more you dig through the reference sheets, you can figure out what year that you would see them in what paint scheme. Standard plans. Here, this is a handy thing. I got this from Tom Noy. Maybe this could be digitized, Bill. I don't know if we have or not, but it'd be a great thing to post. So I took a Grant Line switch stand, added a little styrene arrow and a drop of white paint, and I have something that's passable for a GN switch stand. And this was, I think these were done in '89 was when the standard plans were produced. Likewise, another thing that that Great Northern, the Historical Society has reproduced is this document from Westinghouse that was produced in 1929 in support of the opening of the electrified division, the expanded electrified division. We use this to get information on catenary poles to develop 3D models. My friend Mike Dubinsky and I put this together, 3D model of the poles that were then are on Shapeways now if you need something like this, and can do the individual pole, or it's not difficult to scratch build the little angle support bracket. Recreations of famous photos, like this press bureau photo of the Empire Builder coming out of the west end of the Cascade Tunnel after 1929. This is in kind of reversed in my layout, but still make a credible photo of it. I'll talk more about this photo in just a minute. That's an interesting mashup. Then, of course, the Historical Society is not the only place you can find references, but the reference sheet authors are often behind a lot of the references that we use, color, black and white photos, you name it. And then this book, which was done just a few years back, is just amazing in terms of all the catalog of steam locomotives and photos of steam locomotives of multiple sides and equipment. So it's just a fantastic reference. Everybody needs this if you're modeling steam, in my opinion. And of course, there's the archives, which has been mentioned, and it is a fantastic resource that I've starting to make more and more use of. So big thanks to Bill and Dan and others that have worked there to put this together. Contributing to the documents, this is after developing those catenary poles, we put together a little article for the modelers pages on how we did it and what they look like, a bit of the historical background along with the models themselves. Then other things we've put together, favorite model photo. Here's a famous caboose hop photo that there's a famous shot in Everett. I don't have exactly the same structures in the Everett station, but a credible version of that caboose hop. And then on the right is a homage to Dwayne Buck, who was really a sage on F units. And so this F unit is one that was super detailed by Ray Wheeler, I mentioned earlier. And then I photoshopped this into a photo of Cascade Crossing. Now, admittedly, this was the Natron cutoff down in Oregon, SP's line, now UP. I had a photo that was looking straight down the track, but it's passable for the Cascades. So wrote this little bit as a homage to Dwayne. Also, the detailing and weathering, say, an AccuRail model into something that looks pretty good for the era with three-way marks, chalk marks, that sort of thing. So contributing to any of the society's publications is great. If we're using them, we should help propagate this. And then I mentioned this photo earlier. So here's that famous press bureau photo in the upper left of the Empire Builder coming out of the tunnel at west end of the Cascade Tunnel. And if you know the area, you know there is nothing that looks like the background here. This is what the background looks like. This was the original Lee Pickett photo that they then by hand got rid of these poles lines. You can see where the catenary changes angle here, where it's supported on the pole, but the pole's gone. And then my friend Bob Croce was the one who identified this as, hey, that's Index and Mount Perseus. And here's a photo from, again, Lee Pickett in Index, from the Index High School, looking across toward the east at about the same, I think, as this photo, which was used. It's the same snow conditions essentially on the mountains. So we think we're doing all this fancy stuff with Photoshop today. Imagine how hard it was to do that in 1929, but they did it. The store downloads, you've got access now to all these modelers pages, various documents, where I used to spend hours clicking through the list of here's the 20 reference sheets that I want, and send off a mail and a check to the society, and then in a few weeks the pages would show up. But now it's a lot easier thanks to the digitization that various folks like Bill have done. The stores from time to time has some great stuff. These are the Canton hoppers that were done in various paint schemes recently, and bought a little group of those and put the brake pipes on. That's what looking at here, just to dress them up a bit. And these I run on my layout as limestone hoppers going to a cement plant at Grotto. And then in the recent mailing for the fall, there was the 2024 calendar that came out. And, you know, as soon as I saw this photo on the left for August of 2024, I said, I've got to recreate that by taking a photo, even all the way down to the Wabash boxcar in the background. And if you want to be pure about it and have black and white, well, here's a black and white version too. So, and I discovered that the stingers on the key model stick out a lot further than they actually do on the real Y1s. So can't have everything. And so, you know, can we do some mountain railroading of the Great Northern? And it's like, you betcha we can. And it really is all with the help of the Great Northern Railway Historical Society. So huge debt of gratitude, and try to help out a bit. That's what I've been trying to do. So with that, thank you. And I'll take some questions if got time. Now I see some chat.
We've got plenty of time.
Okay. Good. So it didn't look like there are questions to answer here in the chat. I was just scrolling through, but questions live would be great.
I'm just thinking, just impressed with all the work you've done, and that's a great presentation to promote the society as a whole too.
Well, that's when Jacob asked me to put something together, I thought, well, maybe that's what I should be doing here, is kind of tie it all together, both the modeling side and the history side. I'm as interested in the history side, especially the engineering part, as I am the modeling. So, you know, it's a great combination, a twofer, so to speak.
Lee, this is McGinley. Would you describe your photographs here? I know that you use the Helicon focus, and maybe some of the folks might appreciate knowing why you have such a wonderful depth of field.
Well, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. And this photo is a really good one to illustrate that. What I do is as Bill mentioned, I use a photo called Helicon focus, which is what's known as a focus stacking program, which actually I learned that even in some of the imaging that they're doing in medicine now, they're using essentially the same thing. And the idea is you take a number of photos on the same, say, f-stop and time, and the only thing that changes is the focal depth. And so this photo right here might be a composite of, I don't know, 12, 15 different photographs, and the camera does not move, and you're not changing the light. And so you go through this whole series and then load those into the program, and the program will assemble them into a single image that has depth of field that's, in essence, full, as shown here. And it's interesting that your eye is such an amazing instrument that it can change focus as you look in different depths through a scene or any place outdoors. You don't even notice that you're out of focus in some areas and not in others. Your eye changes so quickly that images look like this to the, in person. But this is so hard to achieve with a single photograph in model railroading because of the extreme depth of field changes. So I mentioned that might be like 12 to 15 photos here. Most of those in this photo would be between the right-hand side and, say, that first express reefer at the first catenary pole, because the very near areas, maybe you get a few ties, or it might take 2 photos to get that right-hand truck of car 267 in focus. And then all the way over at the left side, one photo might be in focus from the far back corner, which is actually on the other side of an aisle. We're looking directly into that L, the knee of the L, as I called it on the layout plan. And so from the front of, or maybe even the midpoint of that orange Y1 all the way to the wall would be one photo. So it's nonlinear in that sense. So you need if you have something that's very close, as the right-hand foreground is, you need a lot of photos to pick that up. But it is so easy to do this. If you can control your camera manually, take enough photos, it is a snap to have that program assemble the photos into a composite image. And the first time I did this, I was just amazed. I downloaded the program and thought I'll give it a try. I'd heard about it. And as soon as I did that, I started shooting pictures. Then it's actually probably now a 5th piece of that wheel that I showed you that I spend time taking photos. But it's been a lot of fun, and you can get some great results. I think Rich Ramirez is using the same technique as some of the photos that he's published, as the modeling editor.
And I'm not, Lee, I'm not sure I'm recommending this exactly, but Lee's as you can tell, he's a real evangelist when it comes to using this, and he got me doing it. And I even do it with my cell phone. I just stick the cell phone against a steady surface, and I can take 4 or 5 shots with a cell phone camera and just put it into Helicon focus, and I have an amazing photograph. And that's not even with a tripod, but although it comes out a lot better if you use a tripod. But
It does, but I
But-
think the day's coming when a cell phone is going to be able to do the whole process for us.
Oh, that's
It's-
right.
It's not far off, I don't think.
Lee, what's the name of that program again?
Helicon Focus. It's spelled Helicon, Focus, just Focus. And professional photographers have been using it for like macros of flowers and, insects, that kind of stuff, really small things, which, our models are really small things. And you can download a relatively inexpensive version of it. I think you can even get a free version that lasts for a short while. But I've bought a single version of it in 2013, and I'm still using the same one. They've upgraded it, but it still works for me. And then I use Photoshop elements to crop and, maybe tweak some things if you find some big spot on the side of a Pullman green car that tells you that, oh, this does not look right. You can usually clone that out. That's been my strategy. And then with my catenary, my opinion has been, looking at photos, unless the catenary wires are against the sky. So like here, they're all against scenery. You can hardly ever see the actual wires against the scenery. You can see them clearly against the sky. But I left the wires off because it makes it a whole lot easier to clean track and do maintenance and that sort of thing. And it seems to achieve a believable, image of an electric railway.
Beautiful.
So there's not any other questions about, the presentation. I can stop sharing now. If you'd like, and we can get back where we can see one another.